everyone. I'm Patty Barr. I'm from ICATER, which is the Iowa Center for Assistive Technology Education and Research. We're here in the College of Education at the University of Iowa. Today we're talking with Sujit, and we're going to talk about employment and barriers to employment and things that help to have people with disabilities succeed in the job market. This is a project that's funded through the USED, the University Center for Excellence in Disability. So welcome, Sujit.
Thank you.
How are you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
Good, good. Well, I'm hoping that we can start out by you just telling us something about yourself, your likes, your dislikes, some of your work aspirations.
My name is Sujit. I'm currently working as a program specialist at the local public access station here in Iowa City. I'm into media, television, radio, television production. I'm a huge sports fanatic. I don't really have a lot of dislikes. I can't really say I dislike something specifically.
You're pretty easygoing. So what do you want to do for work?
I'm producing television for not only myself, but for other people. It is kind of what I aspired to be. It's because of a job I had as a independent living specialist that this television job originally came to me because they saw my resume and they had a television show going and it wasn't that great, according to them, their word. And so they brought me in and they said, "You can fix it." And so that's kind of how it started. And, you know, my goal aspiration is to be like a television producer for a television network. Like we have here, the KCRD, the KWWL, and I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but the reason I can't really do that kind of job is because of transportation and other employment barriers that I've faced. I have cerebral palsy and epilepsy. Those are my two disabilities. And because of the epilepsy, I'm not allowed to drive. And that has been my big barrier in life and in work because I can't go to certain places and I can't do a lot because I have to rely on the bus or Uber or friends or family to take me wherever I need to go. And if they can't take me, I can't go.
And I bet Uber has been a big help.
It has, but the money that it takes is kind of expensive. Just to go by car, 4 or 5 minutes away costs $7. So $7 each way is $14. And where I work, I only work 2 days a week because that's all that really is there for me in an employment aspect. I get $66 a day before taxes, and 14 of that 66 would be taking the Uber to actually take a bus. So I get off work at 8, the next bus is at 8:45, so I have 45 minutes to kill every day when I come back. And by every day, I mean Monday and Wednesday. But trying to even find a secondary job is hard because, you need a job that fits what I have, but a lot of jobs say, valid driver's license required. And when I talk to them about, hey, can you accommodate me for this? They really can't because they tell me it's a part of the job. So they kind of possibly get away with not having to accommodate you because it says it's part of the job.
So a function of the job.
Correct. And so even looking at the local hospitals here, just to be like patient transport, you need to have a driver's license for that. It's in the job description. So pushing a patient from their room to X-ray, apparently
you have a driver's license. Really?
Apparently,
that seems
it's doesn't in the job description.
Oh my. Whew.
So I can't even do a job like that. So currently,
we've got some work to do.
Yeah, and so I have the job, and it's only 2 days a week. And then I also work for the Center for Disability and Development as a media production specialist, and they, are great. And I only get 10 hours a month. Minimum at most I get 15 in a month, and it's a great job, and it helps me in the media field. But 10 hours a month isn't that great.
What kind of things would you tell an employer if you say to an employer, hey, this would help. What I mean, you're asking them to accommodate.
Well, they say, especially when you go into like the social work field, because I have being an independent living specialist, i.e., like a social worker job. They say that you need to be able to drive a client wherever they need to go. You need to be able to get to a client if they call you, that type of thing. And they don't realize that taking an Uber or taking the bus can still accomplish the same goal, depending on where you have to go or where your client needs to go.
Mhm.
So they just see it as you need a car. But I feel they do that because they haven't lived a life where they don't have to use their car.
Mhm.
When talking about them, because they want to know more. Tell me more about that. And so I tell them, imagine your life for a week without your driver's license or a car,
Mhm.
and see how much you actually rely on your car to get to where you need to get every day or every week, whatever the case may be. And so they're very dumbfounded by the idea. And I say, listen, this is my life. This is what I do every day. And I can't, say, oh, let me get behind the wheel of a car because I'm an epileptic. So I could easily get behind the car. I know how to drive. But if I have a seizure behind the wheel, which I have done before, and luckily I didn't hurt anybody and there was nobody around, but I could easily hurt somebody or kill somebody. So that's why I never drive.
Mhm.
Even though I have the capability to, I never will. And so they just want to know what it's like. And they don't know that these alternate things, Uber, Lyft, taxi, that they're there to use. But they ask me, oh, it must be something easy. And I tell them, no, when you're in a financial stronghold, I guess, like I am, where I'm living less than paycheck to paycheck because I can't, $11 an hour for 6 hours twice a week
Mhm.
isn't a lot. When my goal aspiration is to be so much more than that.
I
So,
know how dedicated you are to them
thank
and,
you.
and getting things done.
Right. And so when my goal aspiration is to be, and it's all in Cedar Rapids, but when I went to look and search, maybe I should move to Cedar Rapids, their bus system only goes through half of their city.
Really?
It doesn't,
Oh
yeah, it
my
only
gosh.
covers the southeast side, I think. Don't quote me on that, but it's like a certain aspect of Cedar Rapids, but it doesn't go to another aspect. So if the bus doesn't go all over the city, I can't live there.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
So I'm in a way, and I love Iowa City, but I'm currently stuck in
Yeah.
a situation where my job is great, but I can't get a full-time job because there's so many barriers that are coming at me.
What other things are barriers in the workplace? Are there any others that you can?
For me, there's not a lot other than the transportation aspect of it. Because once I get my foot in the door and it's a part that they've seen that I can do, and much like what I've done with you,
Mm-hmm.
it's great. I can do a job,
Mm-hmm.
but I have to either take the bus and get there early,
Mm-hmm.
and they won't let me in the door early because they're not gonna pay me for a half hour early, so I have to sit and wait until that time comes. Then I can start to work, and that's a barrier because I wait around. I start work at 2 o'clock. The bus gets me here at 1:30, and I have to just wait.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a little bit of a barrier, but it's not something I am not
Mm-hmm.
used to because I've gotten used to it. But just the transportation is a big thing for me. But for other people, I type one-handed because the cerebral palsy affects my right side. So I type one-handed, and I've learned, 27 words a minute, which is great. But
How
it's
many
all,
words a minute?
last I did was like 26, 27.
Wow, that's great because
Yeah,
most of us type, 25 to 30 words a minute with two
yeah,
hands.
but there's certain places though where you have to take a typing test.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't do 40 words a minute, they don't, I guess, enter you into the system as a possible candidate. You
Mm-hmm.
have to hit certain words per minute. And if you don't, you're done.
Yeah. So how do you type with one hand? Have you ever used any assistive technology for typing?
At first, I didn't, just because, like, Dragon Dictate, when I took that typing test, I didn't know that that was a thing. So we're looking at, almost 10 years ago, a little bit more than that. And Dragon wasn't a thing, or people didn't know about Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
So it was what it was. I did because of you and Amanda. That's the only reason I know what dragon is. And I've tried it, and it's great. But, when it comes to certain things, some places don't realize that dragon is an accommodation. They
Right,
don't realize that dragon is there.
right.
Unless you bring it to them, you show them how it's done. And if I don't know how to do it, how am I supposed to be able to teach
Yeah,
somebody else how to do it?
yeah. So have you used Dragon? That's a voice input
Uh,
voice input
yes,
program, right?
yeah, but I've just used it recreationally
Mm-hmm.
because I tried it with Amanda, and that was the only time I've ever used it because nobody else has ever told me it needs to be done in a certain time frame.
So you mentioned that your cerebral palsy affects your right side. So
Yeah,
you do a lot of things one-handed. Are
correct.
are there do you ever use any assistive technology or any tricks to be more efficient with one hand?
I've never tried because I've always been in a very stubborn way. I don't need any help, and that's a lot of thing with people with disabilities too. They don't want the help. They don't want to ask for help because they think if I ask for help, then I'm lesser than I am,
Mm-hmm.
because I have to rely on somebody else to help me. And we're already relying on a lot of people to help us in whatever different ways we need to.
Mm-hmm.
And if we have to go to that step. But the thing that I'm realizing through you, through Amanda, through learning through Mike, and a bunch of other people is it's not a bad thing to ask for help. You don't have to feel like you're lesser than you are because they're just like you are trying to help me and trying to help other students to make things easier.
Yeah,
Not to say that you're lesser than you are. It's
yeah,
just here's all these things that can help you be better.
yeah.
Come and just find out. So maybe if there's and I know this from working with you, a pen recorder, using the iPad, using, the new technologies in the Linquist Center with all the boards and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Come look at it. If it's great and it helps you, fine.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, it doesn't.
And if you are in a work situation and you have a seizure, what are people supposed to do? And
I've told people just to let it happen. Because, I mean, if there's like things around me where I've fallen onto something or sharp objects, move them. Just because once I'm down, I'm down. I don't like roll over or anything. It's just where I'm at, where I'm at. I tell them don't touch me
you
because
what?
I tell them not to touch me
Mm-hmm.
just because I don't know what's gonna happen. I've kind of told them about like the misconceptions. People say, make sure he doesn't bite down on his tongue. That's not a thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's just whatever people have said.
Mm-hmm.
And then I tell them, I tell them if it lasts more than like 10 minutes, call an ambulance. But if it's anything under that, leave it alone.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be out of it and then I can get back up and be the same person. Or I feel like I've gotten hit by a Mack truck.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on what happens, happens. But I just tell them to leave it alone, move things out of my way. And if you want to watch me. I don't care. But if you don't and you want to run away, I'm not going to be offended by it. Just
Mm-hmm.
do whatever you feel is most comfortable for you.
Yeah, this is just part of part of you.
Right.
And
It is who I am. I always tell people, it doesn't define me, but it's made me the man that I am
mm-hmm.
because I've had to reconstruct my life around it and reconstruct my life around the cerebral palsy too. I walk with a limp. I'm 35 and I have, all this joint pain and things that I should be feeling when I'm 80. I
Mm-hmm.
have when I'm this young. Sometimes I walk with a cane because of the pain.
Mm-hmm.
It's just I have to change. I mean, everybody has to change based on what happens from one day to another. Mine's just a little bit different because, my bones didn't grow properly.
Some of the things I think about, like um, you know your attitude is just so positive all the
Thank
time.
you.
And whenever I've met with you, you've always been on time. um, you know you seem honest, and loyal.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think of all the really great characteristics that you have that that people want in an employee, and you have many of those. And just, are there other things about you that you would want to tell an employer?
You put on a brave face. I've had things where I've had a seizure before a meeting, and then I come into work and nobody even knows.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to act like this. You leave. They always say leave personal things outside the door. When you come in, you do your job.
Mm-hmm.
And I always think about that. Like, my job isn't to tell people, oh, I had a seizure, because, oh, can I do anything for you? Do you need a break? Do you need some water? Whatever you need, I can get it for you. That's treating me different. And so I like to tell employers, don't treat me different. Even in the classroom, I've told professors, don't treat me different. Treat me like you would treat every other student or every other employee, because that's who you hired. You didn't hire the disabled man. You hired me off of my
Got a lot of skills.
right, off of my skills, off of my attitude. What you saw in the interview is what you're gonna get. And I'm very honest in every interview I've done. I tell them I have cerebral palsy, I have epilepsy. This is what it is. I'll ask whatever you want. Like you were saying, I'm very honest. I'm an open book in any way, because it's a teaching tool. Because maybe someone who hasn't had a disability has come in the interview, and I'm the first person you've ever seen.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's possible. I'm not going to ask that, but it's possible. So, like with you, years ago, you hired me to do a video. That's what you came in, Lizzie, Brian, we all sat down, and I'm supposed to take the lead because nobody knows how to do this video.
No.
My skills in college.
We didn't know what we were doing.
Exactly. So you all relied on me. If I came in as the, oh, poor me, I have a disability, that's not going to help the situation at all. Because when you're looking to me for leadership, me being the, oh, poor me, is not going to help you. It's not going to help Brian. It's, we need to get this video done. And you remember, I didn't charge you anything because it was the first time I had ever done a film. So we were helping each other in a way. I helped you get the video done. You helped me get, experience in how to do field work, because I'd never done it before. So I had to come in to be a leader, and seeing me as you never saw me as the person with a disability. You saw me as a person who you guys needed help with because you didn't know what you were doing, and I did. So that's how we work together, and that's how I hopefully will see in the future, whatever job I get or don't get or whatever it is, that I am me and I'm not my disability. That's what I like to tell people anyway.
Yeah, cool. Well, I know you just this week are finishing up with a film. I don't know if you want to say anything about that.
Well, the film is a lot of what I've said already is what the film is, because the film came about because of the poor me, or the different reactions that people have given me as a person with a disability, and they don't quite know how to go about helping a person with a disability. So that's why I wanted to have Through My Eyes, which is the title of my film, have 4 able-bodied and 4 disabled individuals, and have them come together to mirror one another and come together to teach one another about disability and to get a conversation started. Because in the county that we live in, unfortunately, from what I've seen anyway in my personal experience, disability isn't really talked about. It's more like you see somebody in a wheelchair go by, you watch them, but you don't stop to think about what their life is like.
I always want to say, hey, great wheels,
Yeah. And you have double. So in a way,
still don't do that.
right. And so there's actually a part in the documentary where Kyle and Amy are sitting down because she's in her wheelchair, because she's so quote unquote mimicking Kyle, but we couldn't mimic quadriplegic, So what I had them do is I just had them sit and talk. And so one of the things that Amy mentions or asks is, if I see a person with a disability, what do I do? And Kyle answers that question. And, he pretty much says it's a very good question. And what you need to do is, if you feel like you want to talk to that person or you see them struggling, just ask, is there anything I can do to help you?
Mm-hmm.
You know, some people might say no because I need to figure this out on my own, which is why I don't ask for help personally a lot, because I need to figure out how to get it done on my own. I need to figure out how to do it one-handed. I need to figure out, you know, because for what I have to do, sometimes I have to walk 3 miles per day to get something accomplished, or take 3 buses to get to one place.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that's what the documentary talks about, is how to blend it. And so you can see through an eyes of a person with a disability what it's like to do something. You
Mm-hmm.
know, for example, Mike Honig and Simon and Andrew. Simon pretends to be blind. And we put a sleeping mask over his face, and he's completely blind, quote unquote blind, and he walks the pedal. I mean, it's the a non-construction version of the Pedmo, but it's the Pedmo.
Yeah.
And he crosses the street and he asks Mike a bunch of questions. And Mike gives a lot of good things that I don't even know about. The man's my boss, about how he feels the sun over his shoulder and he knows what direction he's walking in. And he memorizes the street. I have trouble memorizing streets and I can see perfectly.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things you learn about certain disabilities that even a person with a disability doesn't know. Because there's that one quote everybody uses, that if you know one person with a disability, you know only one person with a
One person
disability.
with disability. Right.
And like you use, and you have it in your office over there somewhere, that 96% of disability is invisible.
Mm-hmm.
And mine's invisible too. I mean, the epilepsy part of it. And everybody's is different. I've seen someone who has epilepsy too, but he has it 3 or 4 times a month, and I have it once every other. And so, you know, he has all these surgeries to have things in his neck to go to his brain, you know, all those things that I'm not well qualified for. And so I don't qualify for a lot of like social disability insurance. I don't qualify for it. I'm too able bodied.
Mm-hmm.
But there's someone like Keith who you know, he and I have the same disability. He gets Social Security and I don't. So
Mm-hmm.
it's very difficult. So I wanted people to see through the eyes, and that's why this documentary was done,
Mm-hmm.
because it needs to bring awareness and it needs to bring a conversation that people don't have in our county.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to coming to the opening
I,
on.
I can't wait for you to see it and tell
I'm
me what you
excited.
learned.
Excited to see it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you would like to share with our audience?
From an employment standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's something in which people need to open their eyes about people with disabilities and hiring them.
Mm-hmm.
Because just because they look a certain way or they act a certain way doesn't mean they can't do the job.
Mm-hmm.
For a person like a Keith Ruff, who you would see all over our county, who is in a wheelchair, who, you know, vocally doesn't really, I mean, it's hard to understand him unless you've been around him. He has a master's degree. If you look at him, there's no way you would see masters in social work,
Mm-hmm.
but he has it. And he is a self advocate, and I'm a self advocate, but we're more than what our disability is. And people need to understand that and help us in a way where just because we have a disability doesn't mean we can't do the job, or trying to find an accommodation. For me, it's transportation. I've taken a bus an hour and 15 minutes each way just to get to work. And it's a lot on my body, and that's why I had to leave the job. But we do what we have to do.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, there's a self advocacy thing I'm working on right now with the Johnson County Iowa City bus system, because there's a disability bus pass that, you know, Iowa City has, but it doesn't work all day. And so for 3 hours a day, it doesn't work. So for those 3 hours a day, I have to pay money. But I get off work during those hours, so I've got to figure out, do I pay the dollar or do I wait for an hour and a half so my bus pass works again?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of barriers we face in the employment world, but we're also capable of breaking those barriers if we have the right help and if we have the right people to help us. And a lot of people don't want to help us because they're scared to help us, because they think something is going to happen to us. You know, I had a job where I had a seizure in the workplace and they thought I was going to file for workers' compensation, and they got scared. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that. This is part of my life. The work didn't cause it. it is who I am. So it's these different things that change where if you just sit down and talk to us, we can tell you what we need and what we don't. And it can start a conversation which, again, isn't happening in the workplace right now.
I'd like to thank you for meeting with me. Thank you for letting us record this conversation, and I hope that this is useful for people to understand more about people with disabilities in employment and how people with disabilities can be great employees.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so much fun.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.